Hi everyone, how are you today? I'm doing well. Today I'm going to start painting white wild roses. And I like to have my white flowers with lots of color in them. You know, typically white flowers, when they're off by themselves, colors that are around those white flowers are reflected onto the petals of the white flowers. And I want to be able to see those colors a little bit better. So what I do is I take my photo that I've taken of the flowers and I enhance the colors. And that way it allows me to see the colors that are in those flowers. And then I translate that to my painting. So I'm going to show you how I do that. If you'll stay tuned, we'll get started. I won't be talking through this entire video. This is more a demonstration of how I do it. So I will be posting captions on everything so that you'll understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So if you'll stay tuned, let's get started. See, I've got 3 pictures here. This is one that I've previously painted and it turned out really well. So I thought I would give you a demonstration of how I painted it. And this is how it came out, how the picture was taken. And what I've done is I've taken and enhanced the colors. So by enhancing the colors, I can add more variety to the painting and have it turn out a little bit brighter and more lively, a little bit more excitement. So I have already drawn out my drawing and I'm going to be doing some masking. I'll mask the centers of the stamens here in each of these, which are in here. And I transferred this by using this product, which is a transfer paper, and it doesn't contain any wax or grease, and so it's just graphite, and it works very easily. However, you've got to be very careful with it because you will get graphite over everything. You can erase it so that if you get smudges or anything on your paper, then you can just erase it and then wash your hands before you start your painting because you'll get it on your hands too. But I use this in times when I want to work quickly to get things ready, and so that's what I've done today. So for masking, I use this product, which is Peebo drawing gum. Hold that up here, see if you can see that a little easier. It's very easy to use, dries very fast, gives you kind of a grayish green tone to your masking fluid. And I use these tools, which are from Royal and Langnickel, and they are an embossing and stylus set. I kind of fell onto these by accident. I had gotten them to do some embossing on cards, and then I didn't like doing that, so I just kind of set them off to the side. But what I like about these are they have got stainless steel tips on these. So what I do for my masking fluid is I pour it into an unused cap, or an old cap that I had. And I just pour some into that, close this up very quickly. That way I don't have to worry about it drying out. And then I can dip this into the masking fluid and I can just touch it to the paper and immediately start masking. And it goes so easy, no fooling around with the brushes and soapy water and all that. So I just can quickly do this, and if I want to remove the masking fluid buildup on this, just take a tissue and just pull it off and there you go. That's how easy it is. These tips, or these tools have got tips on either end that are stainless steel and different sizes. So I can go from very tiny, this one is very tiny, and to use this, the easiest way is I allow a little bit of buildup on it so that it holds the masking fluid on it a little easier. And it's got a different tip on the other side. So I just decide on which tip looks like the right tip to use, and I go for it. So I'm sure a lot of you have used masking fluid and have gotten very frustrated with it because it doesn't perform like you think it's supposed to, or you can't find the right tool and you use a paintbrush and then the paintbrush gets all gobby and everything. And I stumbled onto these, and I've been using them now for a few years. I do pouring watercolors, and there's a ton of masking that goes with that. So just doing this, dip it in, lob it on, and let it dry. And you can tell when it's dry because it turns a kind of a darker color, but kind of a clear through look to it as well. And that way when I get ready to do the centers here, I don't have to worry about preserving the white spaces or anything because the masking fluid lets me do that. So I'm going to stop recording right now and finish this masking, and then I will come back and show you where I've gotten, and we'll be ready to start painting. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've got everything all masked off now that I want to mask. You can see where the masking is here, and I've got some more down here. So that's all the masking I'm going to do. Everything else I'm going to preserve the whites. And the colors that I am using on this mostly are Daniel Smith. And I'm using New Gamboge, which is a yellow, quinacridone magenta, fatal blue green shade, Aurelian yellow, burnt orange, Antwerp blue, deep turquoise, and then for part of the green, I like to use indigo, and that is Winsor Newton. That way I can get some really deep dark greens in there. So what I'm going to do is start with this center here, and I work wet and wet on this, and so I'm just going to wet this. Masking fluid is all dry, so that's a good thing. And I'm just going to start putting in some yellows in here. You can see where I've done that in this. Just some yellows. And I can just touch it in there, and it kind of disperses out. I love working wet and wet. Gives you a much nicer, more intriguing look to your watercolors. And as the wetness goes away, the shine, once that shine is gone, you can see it in here. Once that shine is gone, I can't work this anymore because then I'll start getting those ugly blooms. Although a lot of artists use those blooms to their benefit. It's not quite how I like to do it, but many do, and it turns out beautiful. So I'm going to put a little bit of green in there, and I mix my own greens. Two greens are somewhat harsh, and I don't like that look. This is a little bit more natural, and what I've done is I've mixed some phthalo green, deep turquoise, and then add a little New Gamboge to that turquoise, and I'm just kind of just putting it in there, letting it disperse a little bit, moving it around however it wants to go. Gives it a looser feel to it. I think I'll put a little of the phthalo green in there too. Kind of like that. Gives a little brightness in there. A little bit too much water going on, so I'm gonna dab a little bit of that out. And then there's some dark around the edge of these centers. And I am using just a little bit of a brown, just a Van Dyke brown. It's also a Daniel Smith. Daniel Smith is my favorite brand. Just put a little bit of this in around the edge here. I think I'll start over here on this side with this leaf. And just wet the petal here, not a leaf, petal. Sometimes I can't talk and paint at the same time, so forgive me. And this is, it's got some shading in it, not a whole lot. That's this one up here. And so for that, I'm using the turquoise. Can't see that real well, can you? There's a lot of glare on that. I'll tip it up a little bit here. See if that helps. I'm also going to put in a little bit of the quinacridone magenta. Gives it a little bit of a lavender lilac look to it. A little water to it and let it run a little bit. And something that I do also is I start putting in backgrounds rather early, especially on white flowers. It helps me determine the depth of my flowers, the depth of the color, the vibrancy. And so since I've got that wet and I'm going to let that dry now, I am going to go over here, turn this around a little bit so you can see it. And I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm going to soften this. It's got a little bloom. My lights in my studio are a little warm, and it's warm outside today. So I'm going to soften those edges just a touch. It's very windy outside. You may be able to hear my wind chimes tinkling in the background. So, and I don't have any masking around the edge of these flowers, because if green gets in there, oh well. But I can see where my edges are here. You can see the glistening of the water there. So you can see I am being kind of careful. Just want to get that nice and wet. The longer it's wet, the longer I'll be able to work that area. If I tip it up, then I can see dry spots in there. You can see how wet it is there. Looks like I've got a little dry spot over in this area. And then I'm just going to be brave. And I'm going for dark. This is Indigo, Winsor Newton Indigo. And I figure if I've got lots of dark in there, it will help those white petals really pop. And then drop in some new gamboge in there. Starts giving me nice green colors. And for this, I don't really care whether I've got leaves showing or anything in there. It can kind of do its own thing. And I can lift out if I need to have some leaves show up in there. I like a kind of a muted background that's rather blurry so that I don't see everything that's there. I want my flower to be my center of attention, and if I do it juicy like this, then I get lots of nice colors and becomes a little bit more lively. Get it to move around, I just tilt the paper. Gives me a nice mixture in there. Just tilting my paper, letting it run. You can see the fun colors I'm getting in there. Kind of maybe a leaf in that area. So that I can continue adding color to that. Like I said, as long as the shiny is there, I can add color. Get a little bit more deep in there. And if I want to make it really deep, a deeper color for lots of contrast, I can add a little magenta in there. Makes it a kind of a pinkish deep green. Gives it just a little bit more life in that area. Just tilting it. You can't see it while I'm tilting it, I'm sorry. But you can see some nice colors going on there. Fun to play with. Okay, I think I'll let that one just kind of hang out for a little bit and see what it does. I think I'll move over to this other side here where I've got some actual leaves put in here and start painting them while this other side dries a little bit. See, these are my leaves that I have in this one. I've done this layout just a little differently. So I've got some extra leaves in here. So get the stem in here. Just using magenta. You know, rose stems are kind of a reddish green. Even though this is a wild rose, it still has that reddish green, brown kind of cast to it. It's wet, so I can still add some colors in there. You can see the colors in there. And you know, when you're doing watercolors, they tend to dry much lighter. So they may look really dark when you're first working with them, but as time goes on and they dry, they start turning much lighter. I'm mixing a little bit of magenta and indigo, which gives me a purple. I'm going to add a little yellow to it. Just running this along this edge here. And with the leaves, I do those wet in wet as well. And I've used a little bit of indigo and new gamboge. I'll let that dry. And then I'll come back in and do another layer and start putting in all of the different colors in there. Guess I should turn that so you can see that, huh? Kind of pulling the water out to the edge here so that I can give kind of a little ragged look to the leaves, since they have kind of a pointy parts on the leaves. How's that for technical? Each leaf is a little different color, which is absolutely fine. And I don't really pre-mix on my palette very much. I do a little bit, but I prefer to let it mix on the paper. Gives it a more interesting look. Guess I should put that leaf. Oh, that's a little bit dark. nice thing about working wet in wet is you can go faster while other things are drying. Once they're all dry, then I can go back in and put the veins in and give it a little bit more character. One thing I'll tell you about when I paint, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I've made a watercolor board, which is what this is here, and I've got my paper stapled to it. I wet the paper real good for a couple of minutes, maybe a minute and a half on both sides, and then I staple it to my paper, and that's the staples here. And I've got these black lines here so that I can lay my paper down straight. And then I don't have to worry about my paper buckling. I don't have to worry about it after I have taken my paper off the board, because it will be perfectly flat and I won't have to touch it again. A lot of people will not stretch their paper, but I prefer doing it. It gives me a better sense of control when I do it. I don't want to mess with it after I've painted it, so I stretch it beforehand and then I put it on this board. These boards last, oh my gosh, I've been using them for, I have no idea how many years now. A long time, maybe 5-6 years. Stick another leaf in here. I didn't draw it, so I'm just going to stick it in. Just makes me feel like I need a leaf there. Splash of paint there, get that up. I've rearranged things a little bit so you can see me mixing the paint. And I started to tell you about my magic eraser, which is Mr. Clean. It's a household product. I cut them into these small squares or rectangles, and I can lift out paint then. And if you do it real gently, it won't ruin your paper. So I have a little bit of blue here I'm going to take out. And I use very clean water. And now when that dries, it'll be really light. You can't see it on the screen, but I can see it a little bit.